Yes, good morning, students. Okay, fine. The first half an hour, let us discuss the class. Second half an hour and do the revision. Okay. Hope you all are prepared for the revision. Yes. So yesterday I told you two chapters. I asked you to study the two chapters. Yes. Yeah. Today we are let us revise those two chapters. I have chosen some questions. From those 20 questions, we shall have a revision. Okay. Got it? Fine. So yesterday we discussed, started about the population level. So population level, I was discussing the basic attributes. Is so what are the attributes of population? To study about the population, you should know some basic characters, and we are discussing about that. So yesterday, what are the attributes we discussed? The first one is the birth rate, which is also called as natality. Then the death rate, also called as mortality. And third one we discussed is life expectancy. And fourth one is lifespan. Okay. Now let us move on to the fifth attribute. Now the fifth one, what we are going to discuss is population growth. So this population growth is one of the major attribute for studying about this population level. Why? Because ultimately your conclusion will be what is the population growth, whether it has been increased or it has been decreased or it is neutral. Neutral in the sense neither increased nor decreased. Okay. So how you will calculate this population growth? So this population growth, it can be calculated in two different means. That is, one is said to be the gross value and another one is the absolute value. Okay, so gross value is like the approximation. Okay, and absolute value is the exact value of the population growth. First let me tell you what is gross value, how you should calculate the gross value of population growth, then we can discuss about the absolute value. Got it? So gross value is the gross value of population growth. Have you heard about the gross term? See, even if we are getting salary, so we will get the gross income and net income. So gross income means suppose the whole the package what we are going to get is called as the gross income. And in this package, some amount will be deducted. Is so for example, if they are a government person, then the amount called as PF, that is called provident fund, it will be deducted. Okay. Then regarding some loans and all, if you have got any loan from the profession, from the particular concern, then they will take some amount for that loan. Okay. Then they will take some amount for health insurance, something like this. So after deducting all those amount, finally what you are getting in your hand, that is called as the net income. Okay. So similarly, you just keep that concept in your mind, gross value and absolute value. So first you should know how you should calculate the gross value of population growth. So this gross value of population growth is calculated. It is calculated as the difference between, what is difference? Sum means you have to add, difference means you have to subtract. Okay. It is the difference of two things. What are those two things are? One is your birth rate and other one is your obviously death rate. So if you subtract your birth rate from death rate, then that is birth rate and death rate, if they are subtracted, then the value what you get is called as the gross value of population growth. So you can write the gross value of population growth is equal to birth rate minus death rate. Okay, so this is birth rate and this is death rate. So this value of gross value of population growth will not be exactly accurate. So the accuracy of the population growth can be calculated by analyzing two more things. So before going to that formula, you should know what are those two more things that is needed for analyzing the absolute value of population growth. Okay. So for this calculation of absolute value of population growth, you should know the concept called as dispersal. You know what is dispersal? You have studied seed dispersal, fruit dispersal. Dispersal means scattering. Okay. So here in population, we are going to talk about dispersal. That is the movement of individuals in and out of the population. That is called as dispersal. So what is dispersal is the movement of the individuals. Okay, you would have noticed in your family itself, some person like they would have moved to abroad countries for their profession, their studies, or any other purpose. From there, they will move into your family again for some reasons. Okay, so the movement of the individuals in or out, either they may go to some other countries, or from some other countries they would have came to our country, that is for any other purpose. And this movement of individuals in or out of the population, in means getting in, okay, out is going out, right? So this movement of individuals in or out of the population, it is called as dispersal. And this dispersal also affects the size of the population. So dispersal also affects. See, when somebody is going from your family to any other country, then automatically your family members will get reduced, right? The number of family members will be reduced. And so, like all over the country, when you talk about all these things, then the number of person or the number of individuals in a population will get reduced. So the dispersal, it affects the size of the, you know what is dispersal? I told you the movement of individuals in and out of the population. So this dispersal will affect the size of the population, and this dispersal can be of two types. Okay, so what are they? One is said to be the immigration, and other one is called as the emigration. Immigration. By the term itself, you would have got to know like what is immigration and what is emigration. The movement of individuals, the movement of individuals into a population, okay, into a population, that is added up to the population, is called as immigration. And the movement of individuals, it is just opposite. The movement of individuals out of the population, the movement of individuals out of the population is called as emigration. Okay, I am talking about the process. The individuals which are moving into the population is immigration, and the process of movement of individuals out of the population is emigration. And individuals, those who are moved into the population, no, and they are called as immigrants. Those persons are called as immigrants. And the individual that has moved out of the population, they are called as immigrants. The individuals are called as immigrants and emigrants, and the process of movement of individual into and out of the population is called as immigration and emigration. Okay, now using this immigration and emigration value, now you can calculate the absolute population growth. Now the formula for population, absolute population growth, is equal to, how can you calculate? You know, like birth rate is always added to the population and death rate will be deleted from the population. And here you just compare, the immigrants will be added to the population and emigrants will be deleted from the population. So how can you calculate the absolute population growth? It can be calculated as birth rate plus immigrants. You have to calculate the birth rate plus immigrants. Okay, because these two criteria, it will add the population, and minus death rate plus immigrants, because these two things are will be deleted from the population. Okay, so birth rate should be added with immigrants, a death rate plus immigrants, and when you subtract these two, you will get the absolute population growth. Okay, before, if you subtract the birth rate and death rate simply, you will get only the gross value. It will be approximation. Okay, but if you add this immigrants and emigrants with birth rate and death rate, and then when you subtract these two values, now what you get is called as the absolute value of population growth. Got it? So now I'll show you the two slides more. This is regarding the population growth attribute. Okay, please write down all the notes. Finish writing first slide. So copy the second one. So we have only 20 minutes more, ma. Yeah, dispersal can also be said to be migration also. Yes. Have me, dispersal can also be said as migration. Yes, you can say migration. Fine. Now, again, relating to this population growth, we are going to see what is meant by increased population growth. Increased population growth, and what is meant by decreased population growth, and what is meant by zero population growth. Okay. So, increased population growth, yeah, into a population means that is into a country. It is not country, ma. Whatever geographical area you are going to define for counting the population, okay, it is not like country. Suppose if you are calculating the population of only Trichy, okay, so now some people have moved to Chennai for their profession or for some other reason, right? So but their native may be Trichy, their hometown will be Trichy, but for profession they would have like moved to some other cities or some other places, right? So they are called as immigrants. It is not, you don't define only as a country. It can be in any defined area, because population for that is whatever population we are calculating for a particular defined area, that area can be like, it may have migrants, it can have immigrants, or it can have immigrants also. Okay, just for example I told us country, like they are moving to abroad or something. Fine. So now coming to this increased population growth, when you will have the increased population growth? When birth rate is more or death rate is more? Give your answers. Yeah, when birth rate is more than the death rate. Simply see, I told you, when you want to calculate the population growth, you have to subtract birth rate minus death rate. Okay, when this value is more than this value, then obviously the answer will be in positive, right? Positive, then it is called as increased population growth. That is called as positive population growth. And decreased population growth, no, it will be, the birth rate will be less than the death rate. So when the second value is more than the first value, then the answer will be in minus, right? Negative. Then it is called as decreased population growth. And when you will get zero population growth, when you will get zero population growth, no change means is equal to death rate. Okay, when birth rate is equal to death rate, then it is called as zero population growth. So this zero population growth, no, you can also say the birth rate plus immigrants is equal to death rate plus immigrants. In the under this condition also you will have this. Under this like in increased and decreased population growth, you may also have this condition. Birth rate plus immigrants will be more than the death rate plus immigrants. Birth rate plus immigrants will be less than the death rate plus immigrants. So either you can use it for absolute population growth or gross value of population growth. Anyways, birth rate will be always than the death rate in the increased population growth, and birth rate will be less than the death rate in decreased, and zero population growth, no, it will be equal. So this zero population growth is a very, very, very important concept. Okay, because the zero population growth occurs when birth rate is equals death rate, and finally the population growth is zero, which means the size of the population remains constant. Okay, when zero population growth is taking place, then the size of the population remains constant. That means it neither increase nor decrease. Okay, So this is called as the zero population growth is called by a term demographic transition. When there is zero population growth or when the size of the population remains constant, this zero population growth can be called by a term demographic transition. The zero population growth can be called as demographic transition. Okay. You please copy this one. So this increased, decreased and zero is very important, ma. So shall we move on to the next attribute? Now, what is the number? Yeah, 6. Number 6. Now, the sixth attribute what we are going to see is bioindex. Regarding to the relating to the population, then now the next attribute what we are going to discuss is bioindex number. Okay, you can put bioindex number. So what is bioindex number? So there is a formula for bioindex number. You just write the formula. By this formula, you can define it easily. It is birth rate divided by death rate. Birth rate divided by death rate is called as bioindex number. So how can you define bioindex number? It is the ratio of birth rate to the death rate. That's it. Okay. The ratio of birth rate to death rate is called as bioindex number. Now, I will ask you one question. In case of zero population growth, what is the bioindex number? In case of zero population growth, the bioindex number is 1. Very good. 0. Who told 0? How it will become 0? When it will become 0? When the bioindex number, when it will become 0? Anything? In numerator, it should 0 or denominator, it should 0 for the value to be 0. Yes? Only when the numerator is 0, when, yeah, then your final answer will become 0. When the denominator is 0, your final answer will be, if something is divided by 0, ma, what will be the answer? Infinity. Very good. What you are is like some of you are JE students, but still I am not getting the answer. Right? So bioindex number, no. So based on the value of birth rate and death rate, the bioindex number will vary. Okay, got it? Fine. Now the 7th one is population size. The next one is population size. The next attribute what we are going to discuss is population size. Fine. So what is population size? So before that, you just know like population size, no, it may range from few individuals. The population size will vary from few individuals to millions. To millions, depending on what? So population size will vary from few individuals to millions. That is from small population to big population, depending on so many things. Depending upon the species, depending upon the geographical area, depending upon the impact of predators. If predators are more for a particular species, then automatically the population size of the prey will. If there are no predators in a particular environment for that particular organism, so if predators are not there, then the population of that organism will be high. Why? Because as there are no predators, they can survive till their lifespan. Okay. So based on the impact of predators, based on the outcome of competition, if competition is less, then the population size will also be high. If competition is more, then the population size will be less. Okay. So again, this outcome of competition also one of the factors that determines the population size. And then suppose if you are going to effect of pesticides, okay, suppose if you are using pesticides in an agricultural field, then automatically the number of pest population in that particular agricultural field will be very less. Okay, etc, etc. Like so many factors can determine the population size. Sometimes the population size is either too big to measure or meaningless. So then the size, suppose if the population size is too big, you can write if the population size is too big to measure, if it is very high, if the population size is too big to measure, then the population size can be called by a term said to be population density. Density means if the population is very high in a particular geographical area to measure, yeah, climatic factors also determines the population size. Okay, that's why I told etc. etc. means many other factors are there which are determining the population size. And whenever you are measuring a population size, and if you find the population size is too big to measure, then you can say that particular organism of population is called as population density. Density means which is like in a small geographical area you will have high number of population. Okay, or like you can say like particular in a particular environment, as the predators are very less, the population size will be very high. So in that case you can say population density. If the population size is too big to measure, then you can call it as population density. If you want to know the exact definition of population density, you can write population density can be defined as the number of individuals. It can be defined as the number of individuals per square unit area. Per square unit area. Or you can say per cubic unit area. Based on the geographical area, you will use the unit of measurement. Suppose the geographical area is very small, you can use per square unit area. If it is very big, okay, you can use per cubic unit area. Suppose mostly the per square unit area will be used for measuring the population of terrestrial organisms. And per cubic unit area measurement will be mostly used in aquatic organisms or in aerial organisms. For measuring the population of aquatic organisms or aerial organisms, you will go for per cubic unit area. Okay. And sometimes the population density is not required and only relative density serves the purpose. If the population density is not there, then they will calculate the relative density. For example, the fish which is caught per trap in a lake can be used as population density. Okay, so this is an additional information. If you want to have a clear definition of population density, you can write this definition. It can be defined as the number of individuals present per square unit area or per cubic unit area is called as population density. Copy this. So we have seen the seventh attribute. Now we can move on to the eighth attribute. The eighth attribute is sex ratio. Sex ratio. Any idea about sex ratio? What we are going to calculate in sex ratio? Number of female per male. Yes, very good. Sex is like it is going to determine the male and female. Okay. And ratio is the difference, right? So it is the number of females per 1000 males. The number of females per 1000 males. That is called the sex ratio. So according to the 2001 census, according to 2001 census, okay, because 2001 census has been mentioned in your NCERT. That's why I'm telling. Okay. According to 2001 census, the sex ratio was about 933. So the number of females per 1000 males is 933. Okay. So please remind me. Okay, students, I think it is last. So I will complete with the ninth attribute. Okay. So the next one is the age and sex structure. The age and sex structure. Okay. So what is this age and sex structure? Actually, it is the proportion of individuals. It is the proportion of individuals of different age and sex. Different, you have to analyze the proportion of individuals of different age, and also you have to analyze the sex of the individual. So this age and sex structure can be depicted in the form of a pyramid. Okay, so it formed the plotting percentage of the population of each sex in each age class. For example, if you have determined the age and sex structure for developing countries and developed countries, so let me draw the, see, I will draw one graph. Okay, so one side you can take the percentage of population, and other side you can have the age classes, right? So if you draw a pyramid for this is for developing country. What I am drawing is for developing countries like India. For developing countries like India, if you construct this age and sex structure, you will get a pyramid like this. Okay, you will get a pyramid this, where the ones will be in the base and older ones will be in the top. Okay, so it will be like dividing for, this is, let it be for male and this is female. Okay, and let me tell you how in the developed countries how it will be there. The age and sex structure, how it will be in the developed countries like US or any other developed countries. Okay, again you take the same axis, that is the percentage of population and the age class. Here the graph will be, okay, it will not be very steep. So again, the older people, older age people and the young age people, and in between you can divide for male and females. Okay, so it will be like this. So what you can observe when comparing these two graphs, in developing countries like India, it is less steep at it because it has large number of younger people. See, younger people are more than the older people, right? Because the increasing population in developing countries, so it will give you a graph like this. But in developed countries, it is steeper, which represents nearly stable population. This graph represents stable population. But in developing countries, it will be, here the pyramid will be steeper. Okay, and here the pyramid will be less steep. Why it is less steep? Because younger population is than the older population. Okay, so that is the difference when you compare the age sex structure pyramid for the developing countries and developed countries. Okay, so only one more thing is left now, age distribution pyramid. If we complete that, your what is that is the last attribute that you have to see detailedly. Tomorrow we can discuss about that. Okay, or else like only 5 more minutes I can complete. Let us complete that also. So the last one, because we have only 20 questions, no, we can finish it off in 20 to 25 minutes. So last one, this is a very, very important 3-mark question for your board. At the same time, this is a very important concept for your NEET exam. Age distribution pyramid. So that is age sex structure. This is age distribution pyramid. This is a very, very important concept. For constructing age pyramids, we are going to take 3 different age group of people. For constructing this age distribution pyramid, we are going to take the 3 different age groups are taken into consideration for constructing this age distribution pyramid. So what are the 3 different age groups are? The first one is pre-reproductive age group. Pre-reproductive age group of people. So who are the pre-reproductive age group of people? That is from the birth till 13 or 14 years, you can say they are pre-reproductive for attaining puberty. And second one is the reproductive age group. The reproductive age group of people come under, suppose I am taking till 14 as pre-reproductive, then from 15 to 60 years, they will come under reproductive age group. And the last one is post-reproductive age group. So this post-reproductive age group are the old age people. That is more than 60 years till their death, they will come under the post-reproductive. Now, based on these three different age group of people, we are going to construct three different pyramid for increasing population, decreasing population, and stable population. Okay, so three types of pyramids we are going to construct based on three different age group of people. Three types of pyramids are there for this three different types of population. The first one is the triangular pyramid. Let me draw this. The first type of pyramid, okay? That is P1, P2, P3. Fine. So P1 is pre-reproductive age, P2 is reproductive age, and P3 is post-reproductive age. And this pyramid is called as triangular pyramid. So this triangular pyramid, it indicates what? It indicates expanding population, that is the increasing population. It represents the expanding population with high growth rate. Growth rate will be higher with high growth rate. Okay. Now the second type of pyramid what you are going to get is a bell-shaped pyramid. So this bell-shaped pyramid, no, it will be like this. Again, represent as P1, P2, P3. And this is said to be bell-shaped pyramid. And this bell-shaped pyramid indicates what population? Leftover is stable declining. This represents stable population. This represents stable population, that is with zero population growth rate. That is when you will get stable population, when birth rate is equal to death rate, then it is called a zero population growth. And the zero growth rate, you will get a bell-shaped pyramid. And the last pyramid is, I will draw the one. Okay, and this is called as P1, P2, P3. And this is called as urn-shaped pyramid. Urn-shaped pyramid. And this urn-shaped pyramid, this indicates expanding. The opposite is declining. That is reducing. Declining population. Here, the growth rate will be low, minus, zero. That's not a negative. Okay. A negative population is low growth rate, declining population, and it represents a pyramid that is called as urn-shaped pyramid. Got it? So you please, students, mention this. Already I have mentioned here. That's why I didn't mention there. Pre-reproductive age group is P1. Or else you can put it in bracket here. Reproductive age group are P2 and post-reproductive age are P3. I didn't write fully. That's why I have represented P1, P2, P3. Okay. First one what I have written is pre-reproductive. Second one is reproductive. And third one is post-reproductive. Okay. So based on this three different age group of people, finally you will get pyramid, three different types of pyramid like this. Okay. So with this, the attributes of population is over. So tomorrow we can discuss about the till the age is small, like average we are telling. Okay, female actually they will attain the menopause by 45 or 50. Okay, but male, no, they will have the production of sperm cells till their lifespan. But once when they cross 50 or 60, the number of sperm cell count will get reduced. Automatically the potentiality will also decreases. Okay. I will show you all the slides, students, then we can move on to the questions. So this is the first one. Those who came late, please copy, take the pic or snapshot of all the slides. Later you can sit and copy the one. Okay. Urn, the name of the shape is urn. That's why it is called as urn-shaped pyramid. That shape is urn. Second one. Just take a snapshot or pic. Later you can sit and copy because like we have to discuss the questions. Okay. Third one. Fourth one. Fifth one. Sixth one. Fourth slide. Wait. This is fourth one, ma. This is fourth slide. Fifth slide. Seventh one. And the last one, eighth one. So this is a very, very important question, students. It is a very important 3 marks for your board. Okay. And also for your NEET exam, they may ask you questions from this topic. Okay, fine. Have you all completed? Seventh one. Yes. Seventh slide. Yeah. I'm showing the seventh slide. Okay. So, yes. Now, let us start this revision. Fine. This is the first question. Students, I will give you 15 seconds for you to answer. Okay. Later, I will tell you the correct answer and I will explain the concept also. So, this is the first question. Is the screen is visible to all of you? Can anybody reply if the screen is visible or not? Yes. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. Fine. Now read out the first question. You just wind up your class notes and please come to this revision. Which one of the following pairs of plant structures has haploid? Okay. Wait, I will zoom the slide. It will be easy for you to see. Yes. So which one of the following pairs of plant structures have haploid number of chromosomes? Okay. The first one is nucleus and antipodal cells. Second one, egg nucleus, secondary nucleus. Megaspore mother cell, antipodal cells. Egg cell and antipodal cells. Can you give me your answers? See, don't give your answer in a hurry. Please think a little. I think you are doing the same mistake in your exams. So many of you have given me the wrong answer. Why you are hurry, right? So please, I told you I'll give you 15 to 20 minutes. You are telling me all A, B, C, D. I'm getting all the 4 answers from you. Please think a little, compare both the things, okay? You don't see just one antipodal cell and say like give the answer as A. See, nucleus is a haploid. So please compare all the 4 things, all the 2 options given in all the 4 things, and then you give me your answer. Okay, fine, listen. The nucleus and antipodal cells. Antipodal cells are haploid. Nucleus, generally they have given nucleus. Generally nucleus is said to be diploid. Okay, it is not given nucleus of what? And then the second one, egg nucleus and secondary nucleus. Egg nucleus will be haploid. Okay, but secondary nucleus is not a haploid structure. Secondary nucleus, actually it is a combination of 2 polar nuclei. 2 polar nuclei combined together to form a diploid nucleus, right? So it is not haploid. Here, this is not haploid. In the second option, this is not haploid. And third one, antipodal cells are haploid. Megaspore mother cells are not haploid. They are diploid structures. So first 3 options are wrong. Egg cell is a haploid. Antipodal cell is also haploid. These egg cells and antipodal cells, they will be present in which structure? They both are present in the embryo sac. Okay. So when you are saying embryo sac will have 3 antipodal cells, then 3 cells in the egg cell apparatus, and all the 3 cells are haploid. That is 3 cells in the egg cell apparatus. It includes 1 egg cell and 2 synergids. Okay. And In the center, you have the central cell, and all the cells in your embryo sac are said to be haploid structures. Okay, right? So correct answer is option D. Fine. Yeah, let's go on to the second question. Yes. Wait. Now look at the second question. Which one of the following is resistant to enzyme action? Option A, pollen enzyme. Option B, leaf cuticle. Option C, cork. Option D, wood fiber. Yes. So this one, all of you have given the correct answer. Option A. So leaf cuticle, actually cuticle is a waxy coating which is present on the surface of the leaves. This waxy coating cuticle will help the plants in preventing the excess loss of water by means of transpiration. Okay, it is not like it is resistant to enzyme action. If some lipases are used, this cuticle can be easily degraded. Okay, now coming to the cork. Cork is a, what is cork? So in anatomy of flowering plants, you have studied about cork, right? It is like a differentiated part of your cambium. Okay, so secondary xylem and secondary phloem that is later it will form this cork cambium. So this cork cambium is also it is also can be degraded by the enzymes. Okay, wood fiber, again this can also be degraded because all these things are said to be like they can be easily degraded by using enzymes or by exposing to physical or chemical agents. But pollen enzyme cannot be degraded by anything. Now, tell me the answer. What is pollen enzyme made up of? Give the answer. What is pollen enzyme made up of? Why it is resistant to enzymes? Yes, very good. The pollen enzyme is made up of sporopollenin. Okay, so this sporopollenin is the one chemical substance which is highly resistant to physical radiations, chemical agents, and also to the other enzyme action. Okay, fine. Now the next question we can, yeah. So you just see this question and give me the answer. Unisexuality of flowers prevents. So what is unisexuality? Unisexual means either the male sex organ or the female sex organ will be present and not the both. Okay. So when any one sex organ is present, then what type of pollination will happen? Prevents. It is as they are asking you, unisexuality of flowers prevents. Please think well and then answer me. No, some of you are giving option B. No, I'm getting different answers. Understand or not? See, unisexuality. Unisexuality means it will have either male flower or female. Okay, either male or female. Fine. So in a flower, either you will have the stamen or you will have the pistil. Okay, fine. Now, when any one of the sex organ is present, their self-pollination will never occur. Got it? Only cross-pollination will occur. And under self-pollination, geitonogamy can occur, but not this complete autogamy. So first prevents geitonogamy, but not xenogamy, because both can occur in case of unisexuality. So this is wrong. The second one prevents autogamy and geitonogamy. It prevents only autogamy, not geitonogamy. So the second one is also wrong. The third one, it prevents autogamy, but not geitonogamy. Yes, it is correct. Both geitonogamy and xenogamy are prevented? No, both one will occur in unisexuality of flowers. Again, this is also wrong. So the correct answer is option C. Okay, so option C is the right answer. Got it? Now the next question. Yes. Apomictic embryos in citrus arise from. Apomictic embryos in citrus arise from. Yeah, only one student have given me the answer. What about apomictic embryos in citrus arise from? Okay, see, apomictic embryos. Actually, in citrus, what condition you will have? Can you recall all this asexual reproduction that occur in plants? I discussed in the first chapter. That's why I ask you to read the first chapter also, reproduction in organism. Yes, in reproduction in organism itself, I discussed about all these apomixis, polyembryony, everything, right? So it is called as adventive embryony. In this adventive embryony, what will happen? An embryo develops directly from a diploid cell other than egg. Like it can develop from nucellus or integuments, everything. Okay. So this give rise to a condition called as polyembryonic condition. So this polyembryony is having more than one embryo in a seed. Okay. Now this here, the synergids, it is not synergid, it is not antipodal cell, and it is not diploid egg. So the answer is in citrus, it arises from the maternal sporophytic tissue in ovule. B is the correct answer. Many of you gave the answer called as like A, D and all. It is wrong. Okay. Now the next one. Finished. Yeah, this one. The scutellum you know, right? Observed in a grain of wheat or maize. Wheat, maize, they belong to the family of Graminae. Is comparable to which part of the seed in other monocotyledons? Scutellum. Which one you will call it as scutellum? Cotyledon. The single cotyledon present is called as scutellum, right? So actually in Graminae family, the single cotyledon which is present, we call it as scutellum. And that is comparable to which part? It is not comparable to endosperm, right? It is not comparable to the aileron layer. That is protein layer different. Plumule is not the correct answer. The correct answer is A, cotyledon, right? Yeah. So now do this one. What of chromosomes of the aileron cells of a plant with 42 chromosomes in its root tip cells? Please do it slowly, think it properly, and then do. Don't be in a hurry and give me the don't give the wrong answer. Okay. Have you all completed? Option A, no. Anybody? No. Please think properly, students. See what they have. Tip cells. Root tip cells. Okay. So 42 chromosomes in its root tip cells. Now tell me, root tip cells will be diploid or haploid? Root tip cells will be diploid or haploid? Tell me the answer. Diploid. Okay. So you know the root tip cells will be diploid. So 2n is equal to 42. Then what is n? Half 21. And you know aileron layer, it will be triploid in nature. Okay. So they have asked you the aileron layer, the number of chromosomes in the aileron layer. Aileron layer is a proteinaceous layer which is triploid in nature, 3n. Now you know the value of n. What is n? 21. Okay. So 3 into 21, what is the answer? 63. The correct answer is option A. Many gave like C. C is the wrong answer. Okay. So got it. How this 63 came? You know the role of aileron layer, right? Aileron layer actually it is triploid and it preserves the nourishment of the growing embryo. So the chromosome number in aileron layer will be always triploid in nature. N is 21. So 3 into 21, the answer is 63. Yeah. This is a very easy question. In angiosperms, the functional megaspore develops into what? What is the answer? It is a direct question. Embryo sac. That's it. This functional megaspore will undergo 3 times mitosis. Yes. So first it will attain the two nuclei stage. Then it will become 4. Then it will become 8. Later it will undergo the cell wall formation, and finally it will form 7 cells. 7 cells and 8 nuclei stage is what we call it as embryo sac. Okay. Yeah. Now listen to this question and pick out the wrong statement. You have to find out the wrong statement, not the correct statement. Which one of the following is wrong? Okay. The first one is vegetative cell is larger than generative cell. Correct or not? Is larger than generative cell, right? Pollen grains in some plants remain viable for months. Yes. Some pollen grains viable for years. Some pollen grains remain viable for month also. Intine is made up of cellulose and pectin. Yeah, it is called as pectocellulose layer. When pollen is shed at 2-cell stage, not 2 called, it is 2-cell. Okay, 2-cell stage, double fertilization does not take place. More than 60% of the pollen grains will shed at 2-cell stage. After being deposited on the stigma, it will undergo the one more mitosis, that is the generative cell will divide, and it will result in the formation of 2 more male gametes, and it will be in the 3-cell stage, and later double fertilization will occur. So this is wrong. Okay, so they are asking you to pick out the wrong statement. So the correct answer is option D. Okay. Now this is over, right? This one. Yeah. Now which one of the following statement is correct? You have to find out the correct statement. Read the first one. The hard outer layer of, this is correct or not? Outer layer is intine. Outer layer is exine. It is not intine. Okay. Sporogenous tissue is haploid. Sporogenous tissue consists of microspore mother cells. Mother cells will be haploid or diploid. They will be diploid, right? So the microspore mother cells are diploid. It is not haploid. Again, this is also wrong. Endothecium. Do endothecium spore? It is not endothecium. It is sporogenous tissue which produces the microspore. That is also wrong. Tapetum nourishes the developing pollen. Yes, tapetum will develop the nourishes pollen. It will nourishes the developing pollen. So option D is the right statement, and correct answer is option D. Yeah, read this one. Perisperm differs from endosperm. What is perisperm and what is endosperm? In your midterm exam, differentiate perisperm and endosperm. Do you remember? Perisperm is the one like where the remnant of nucellus will be present. The remnant of nucellus present in a seed is called as perisperm. And endosperm is the one where this endosperm is triploid in nature, and after double fertilization, the triple fusion, because of like this secondary nucleus fusing with one more polar nuclei, it will form primary endosperm cell. Okay, so being a haploid tissue, both are not haploid, so the first one is wrong. Perisperm differs from endosperm. Okay, so perisperm is not haploid. Fine. Yes, they are asking differs from endosperm. Having no reserve food. Perisperm will have reserve food material or not? It will have, because nucellus is there, no? So again, that is also wrong. Being a diploid tissue, perisperm is diploid or haploid? Endosperm is triploid. What is perisperm? Perisperm is haploid or diploid? Give your answers. Perisperm is haploid or diploid, ma? Why nobody is answering? Yes, it is a diploid tissue. It is correct. It's information like by, it is not information. It's information by fusion of secondary nucleus with the several sperms. This is also wrong. It is endosperm. Okay. So the correct answer is option C. Yes, we have 5 more minutes. We can discuss 2 more questions. Wait, I will take 2 more questions. Okay. Yes, read out this question. Non-albuminous seed is produced in, what is the answer? Non-albuminous seed is produced in. Non-albuminous can also be called as ex-albuminous or non-endospermous. Okay, maize is albuminous. Castor is also albuminous. Wheat is also albuminous. And what is the correct answer? P. Okay, yes. Which of the following are the important floral rewards to the animal pollinators? Floral rewards, you know, right? So the first one, the color and large size of flower. Is that a floral? No. Nectar and pollen grains. Yes, animals, insects will suck the nectar and they will eat away the pollen grains, right? Floral fragrance and calcium crystals. Fragrance is a reward. It is not a reward. Protein pellicle and stigmatic exudates. It is also not. So the correct answer is option B. Okay. Now the next question. In angiosperms, microsporogenesis and megasporogenesis. You have to compare these two things and what is the common thing for both. Form gametes without further division. They will undergo division. In microsporogenesis and megasporogenesis, in both, meiotic cell division will take place. Only because meiosis, the mother cells which are diploid, they will form the haploid spores. Right? So, they have told like without further division. This is wrong. They involve meiosis, right? Occur in ovule. Only megasporogenesis occur in ovule. Microsporogenesis occurs in anther. Okay, that is in the sporogenous tissue. And this occur in anther. Anther occur, that is microsporogenesis occurs in anther. And megasporogenesis occurs in ovule. So fourth one is also wrong. The correct one is option B. Okay. Is which one of the following statement is not true? Tapetum helps in the dehiscence of anther. Exine of pollen grains, not true means they are asking you to pick out the wrong statement. Okay, be clear with this. Exine of pollen grains is made up of sporopollenin. Pollen grains of many species causes severe allergies. Yes, example, Parthenium and all, they will causes allergy called as hay fever or rhinitis. Okay. Stored pollen in liquid nitrogen can be used in crop breeding programs. Yes. Tapetum helps in dehiscence of anther is wrong. Okay. Then tapetum will not help. Then who will help for dehiscence of anther? Give your answer. Who will help in dehiscence of anther? Tapetum is responsible for providing nourishment to the pollen. Who is responsible for helping in the dehiscence of anther? If you are saying it is wrong, then you should know which one is correct, right? What is the correct? What should come in this tapetum? Line of dehiscence, okay, ma. Which layer? It is endothecium. Endothecium is the one which will help in the dehiscence of anther. It is not tapetum. So the wrong statement is option A. Okay. Fine. Students, I think time is up. So we have left 5 more questions. Okay. So we can discuss those 15 questions we have discussed and not 15, I think only 14 questions. Okay. So remaining 6 more questions are there. Those 6 questions we can discuss tomorrow. And tomorrow I will write here. Tomorrow your topic is prepare for microbes lesson. We can discuss the remaining 6 questions plus microbes in human welfare chapter. You just have a glance and come microbes in human welfare. We can discuss those questions in microbes in human welfare, some 15 to 20 plus this remaining 6 questions. Okay, fine. Okay, thank you so much. See you all tomorrow.